Today we continue our discussion of form with the theme and variation form. Variation has a long history in Western art music, but really started to shine in the late Baroque period. The classical and Romantic periods saw a lot of theme and variation being used in larger forms such as the symphony. The idea of variation was taken to the extreme by Arnold Schoenberg and his atonal variations on a 12-tone row. We will explore the form and its history in this video. The most straightforward form of theme and variations is quite simple. The composer states a theme, however many bars in length, then varies that theme over and over again through differing processes. Variation form can either be sectional, which has an ending between each variation, or continuous, where there is no break between each variation. The classical period favored sectional variation, and later periods, such as the Romantic and modern periods, favored the continuous variation technique. Variations can also be strict or free. A strict variation preserves the number of measures in the theme in the variation and follows the basic harmonic sequence laid out by the theme. A free variation does not restrict either of those things. Let's look at Mozart's 12 variations on À vous désirez maman as an example. These examples are performed by Stefano Ligorati on the piano. The theme should sound familiar because the French folk song these variations were based upon is the melody for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Let's hear Mozart's theme now. Mozart displays the folk song in very straightforward quarter notes. This is the material that he will use to vary throughout his work. Now let's take a look at the first variation. Mozart uses a variation technique called melodic variation, where he embellishes and augments the melody by adding notes. The theme goes from quarter notes to 16th notes, while the bass part stays practically the same. Another method of variation is rhythmic variation. In Mozart's fifth variation, he changes the rhythm of the theme from straight quarter notes to eighth notes in syncopated offbeats, or beats other than the primary 1-2. It interrupts the flow of the theme and gives it a different character. third method of variation is harmonic variation, where the chord progression of the original theme is changed by adding or substituting different chords. Mozart's seventh variation is a good example of this. Mozart replaces the simple chords of the theme with a progression of descending fifths, complicating the progression and its move towards the tonic resolution. In addition, there's also the variation technique of mode switching, where the mode goes from major to minor or vice versa. In Mozart's eighth variation, he switches from the key of C major to the key of C minor with 3 flats. This is the parallel minor to C major. They share the same tonic. Mozart could have also gone to the relative minor of A minor, sharing a key signature, for his mode switch as well. There are a number of compositional techniques that stand out in the eighth variation. Mozart uses free counterpoint, or the addition of a melody that is melodically distinct but harmonically intertwined with the theme. He also uses suspension, or where one note is held over from a chord to the next chord just to be resolved later. This creates a string of dissonances that resolve one step at a time. Let's listen to the eighth variation. Other variation techniques include augmentation, diminution, or inversion of the theme. I talk about these in the video about Fugue, which I'll link in the eye and in the description box below. Another variation technique is changing the time signature, the most common of which is to move a theme from 4/4 or 2/4 into 3/4 and create a waltz out of it. Other aspects that can be varied in a composition include dynamics, tempo, instrumentation, and texture. There is a record of variation techniques being used at the beginning of Western art music. In Renaissance vocal music, there are 2 variations: contrapuntal variations following the stanzas of strophic chants, and sets of variations over a single, often quite lengthy, foundation voice in a mass or motet. In instrumental music, variations in the Renaissance consisted of dance music that had been changed in meter and style, packaged in sets of 2. The Baroque era introduces continuous melodic variation over an ostinato or repeated pattern of notes in the bass. These variations can be called ground bass, passacaglia, or chaconne, depending on the type of ostinato it uses. Static sectional variations started to be used, as in J.S. Bach's monumental Goldberg variations. Preference for sectional variations continues into the classical period. In the Romantic period, continuous variations came to be used more and more. These variations had no break in between them, but just ran together, forming one whole. Continuous variations were used in more larger works, such as the symphony or the tone poem. In the 20th century, Arnold Schoenberg's 12-tone serialism came on the scene and became another major way to accomplish variations. The technique starts with a tone row, or ordering of pitches, where each of the 12 chromatic pitches is used before another one can be repeated. These tone rows can be varied in a number of ways, called transformations, including inversion, or upside down, retrograde, or backward, or retrograde inversion, or upside down and backwards. 12-tone serialism at its heart is a variation technique. If you would like to learn more about Schoenberg and his 12-tone technique, I'll leave a link in the description box below. Thank you for joining me on this journey through theme and variations form. I had a great time producing this episode for you, and I hope you learned something. I know I did. A big thanks to the performance of the 12 variations of A vous diriger maman by Stefano Ligorati. I'll link his website below. The bibliography for this video can be found on my website, dominiqueroyam.com, and I've linked it below. Also below is a link to my Patreon, where you can support the making of these videos. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment down below. Let me know what you would like to learn about next. Thanks so much and see you in my next video.